basically there is no difference in terms of human feelings and human aspirations. There's no difference. It's only when it comes down to how it's going to affect you on a personal basis or how it's going to affect your country that you begin to see some form of differences coming through. The other difference I saw was that if you had a special relationship with country X, you were going to do everything in your power to convince other people that this is a country that you should develop relationships with. But in most cases, it boiled down to what am I getting out of this? You know, how is it going to affect me? How it's going to affect my country? How it's going to affect my advancement within the diplomatic service? And we had what is called developing and developed countries. And those two things are going to be there running parallel for all times. Developing countries depend on developed countries to assist them with the economy, with a number of other factors that they have to deal with. And if you're not, I think on the general good side of some of the countries, they're not going to be willing to give you any support, any benefits, and this is why you have the point of people trying to get votes, a person to vote against a certain resolution, to vote for a certain resolution, because it's going to help their image with that country and vice versa. And that's why I feel that we're never going to get to the stage where people will be voting their conscience. Now, I can give you one example how naive I was when I first went to the United Nations, because I voted according to my understanding of a situation, not in support of a group or a group of people or any situation, but to vote, if I felt that racial discrimination was bad, I was going to vote against it. I don't care which country brought it forward. Apartheid, I was going to vote against it, not having somebody say that, we have to try and do this in order to help the apartheid government. If I felt that it was wrong, I'd vote my conscience. But you have governments that must make this decision. And if governments felt that there was a special interest that they had, like human rights, which has created a lot of problems in our region in terms of whether the Bahamas is going to vote for Cuba or vote for one of the other countries that might consider to be abuses of human rights, you have this difficulty, where your conscience plays a part, but also you have to look at how it's affecting your relationship with that country. And sometimes you have to make decisions that might not be in your best interest, but you make them anyway. And that's the way the international community functions. Well, I don't know if you know, there have been numerous regional meetings held to deal with the Haitian problem. Meetings were held in Haiti, meetings were held in the United Nations, meetings were held here in Nassau in order to deal with the Haitian problem, because I think countries were realizing that what happens in Haiti will also affect what happens in the region. But I think in many cases there haven't been a great deal of understanding from a regional point of view, so countries had to try and do it bilaterally. For example, Bahamas, affected by the numbers of Haitians that come here, had to try to work out some method of how they were going to deal with the Haitian situation in our own country. Bahamas was one of the only regional countries that had, I'm talking about Caribbean English-speaking countries, that had an embassy in Haiti. Most of the other countries didn't. And the United Nations has done what it can in terms of setting up peacekeeping forces and working through WHO, the World Health Organization, working through the food programs, working through many other specialized agencies they had in order to make changes, to make a difference in Haiti. But it seems as if nothing was going to happen because the country was in turmoil. From a political point of view, they weren't able to get their act straightened out. They had governments that were considered to be corrupt and not interested in developing the needs and the feelings of the people within the country. So there was much that the region could do to enforce some of the rules, and they've had many suggestions of how to deal with this. I can't go into that, but I don't know how many of them have worked out. I think more than ever now, it's come down to a bilateral situation where each country is trying to see what it can do in order to make the situation better for the relationship they have with their country, with them. And then also we have Cuba, which has been, I use the word pariah in a very broad sense, because of the relationship it has with the United States of America and the relationship the U.S. has with the various countries in the Caribbean. And many countries felt they didn't want to antagonize the United States or to do things that might be seemingly going against some of the rules and regulations, particularly if you were getting some benefits from the United States, like helping with drugs and the Coast Guard and all of it. So it's a delicate line that you have to walk. But now I think the countries are realizing that they have got to make sure that they have a stable region. And by having a stable region means that you have to deal with whatever the situation is in Cuba. You have to look at it and try to deal with it from the point of view of how it's affecting your country, how it's affecting the region, how it's affecting your relationship with the United States of America. And I think that is happening quite well. The Bahamas now has an embassy in Haiti, in Cuba, and Cuba has an embassy here. So we're able to have dialogue, which was previously could not happen. Dialogue could only be held in a vacuum. Either you go in not vacuum but in isolation. But now you have persons who can come directly to the various ministries, talk about issues that they have with respect to their relationship with the Bahamas. And again, it comes down to the bilateral. But I think it's also doing some work in the regional sense, that when one country sees that one Caribbean or two Caribbean countries are working with a particular country like Cuba, then they all begin to recognize the need to do that. And it's the same thing with Latin America. Some of the Latin American countries are totally opposed to any relationship with Cuba, and there are others who are strongly in favor. I see that today the Prime Minister or President of Brazil is going to Cuba and talking about developing some billion-dollar kind of investment in Cuba. So the more we try to build up our neighbors, the better it's going to be for all of us. We have tourism, which is extremely important, and I think working together with countries in the region in order to promote the tourist industry would be a plus.